Why is the deadlift the best and worst exercise for people with lower back pain? That's what we're going to look at in this tutorial. We're going to talk about when it's good to use it. We're also going to talk about some times when it might not be that effective to use it, or at least maybe not avoid it, but certainly modify it and change it so we're able to adapt, so we're still able to keep the functionality of the body whilst also building back up with regards to weight and intensity within the deadlift. If you are struggling with lower back pain and you do want some help with exercises and overcoming lower back pain, please do hit the link below and go through to my How to Overcome Lower Back Pain online consultation or coaching, which can also be done face-to-face here in Bristol. So if you want that sort of help, please do click the link below. Now, when it comes to the deadlift, what we're essentially talking about is a lifting exercise. So why is the deadlift so important for lower back pain? One, because it's the lifting technique. So whether you've got lower back pain or not, you're probably going to need to either bend down and lift something back up, or you're going to need to lift something off the floor, whatever it may be. So it's important that when we do this exercise, we need to understand when are better times to do it and when are worse times to do it. So with regards to the exercise, what we're talking about is standing over a weight and lifting it up. Now, it could be a couple of shopping bags that we would go down and lift it up like so. So when we're talking about the deadlift, that's the movement that we're talking about. Now, there are a few times when, or depending on the type of back pain that you've got, will depend on what you need to do. So if you've got what's known as flexion intolerance in your spine, so you've got a spine that doesn't like to be flexed over like that. So that could be from sitting a lot, could be in the office chair, could be in the car. Certain exercises that involve flexion aggravate your lower back. The obvious one is to maintain this proper position. So you would go down, maintain the proper position, and then lift the weights up. So that's sort of like modification number one, is to maintain that neutral posture. So what you're not doing is you're not going into that position which aggravates your lower back. You're able to maintain and lift the weight, or maintain the position, lift the weight up. Now, if you can't get down far enough to pick something up, if it's an exercise, it's much easier to do this. You would just raise the weights up. So what you would do, you would stand over them like I am, but you would have them a little bit higher, and you would only go down as far as you could to maintain that position. So that's sort of modification number two, if you will, is just to lift the weights up. If you aren't able to lift the weights up, you've got another modification. You could come down into this position, but now you can bend your knees, and that will get you down a little bit further. So you haven't gone further into the hip hinge, which is then going to flex your spine. What you're doing is you're going down and using the knees a little bit more. So you're turning more of like that hip hinge movement into more of a squat movement. So that's again another modification that can be used. The other modification is very simple. It's just to use a lighter weight to be able to lift. So that's even if it is shopping bags, just spread the load into other shopping bags and don't lift sort of 2 very heavy shopping bags, lift 4 slightly lighter shopping bags, if that makes sense, or at least lift them and carry them as well. So you've got those types of modifications that you can go through, but that's if you've got what's known as a flexion intolerant spine. So if you've got a spine that doesn't like to be flexed, those are some modifications that you can go through to adapt an exercise, or even just adapt everyday movement. Type number 2 is extension intolerance. So your spine doesn't like to be extended. So if you go into that position, it aggravates in your lower back. Now, when it comes to the deadlift, it's very simple. What you don't do is, as you come into the exercise and you go down, you pick the weight up, what you don't do is come through and push the hips forward like you see some people doing. The idea is to try and get the glutes activated. So you've got the hip hinge, which is the sort of the starting point for that. As you come down, you come into that position, you lift, you stand up tall, and you squeeze here. So you maintain that position, and then you go back down. So if you've got an extension intolerant spine, the key is to just not push the hip through, which is only going to put further aggravation on. You just stand up, activate the glutes in that tall position. final type of back pain, number 3, is load intolerance. So your spine can't cope with heavier loads. So obviously the first modification to make is use a lighter load. So that's sort of the first modification to use. So there's nothing really to do with the posture of it, it's just reduce the load. I would recommend maintaining that neutral posture all the way through, like you did with the flexion intolerance. And I would also, if you can't maintain that neutral posture, I would think about lifting the weight or bending the knees to be able to get into that position whilst maintaining it. Exactly the same with extension intolerance. Try not to push the hips through, just stand up tall, because you won't then be putting additional pressure or unnecessary pressure on the spine. With regards to load intolerance, there are 2 other things you can do. One is activating the lats, and obviously the other one is activating the glutes. So with regards to the glutes, now this is just a conscious sort of activation. So you come into position, you come down, you want to now be able to push the knees out. So you've got, as you come down into position, you come into that position, you push the knees out, so that's activating glute medius, glute minimus, which is going to help support the pelvis, which will in turn help support the spine. So as you come into position, if I just move that here, we'll stand over the weight, come over, push the knees out, and then just do exactly the same and come up, because all that is doing, when you activate more muscles, you spread the load out. So the load going onto the spine isn't as much. So we've got activating the glutes as one of those modifications to make. The second one is activating the lats. So you're spreading the load below with the glutes and above with the lats. So with regards to that, we would come into position, and what we would do, we would have the kettlebells almost between the heels. We would come down. By doing that movement, we are activating the lats. So as we come in, we push the shoulders down into the rib cage, and then we maintain the weight as close to the body as possible. And we come down in the exact same way as well. So it's all about getting the arms close to the body. If you want to, you can get a little tea towel or a band or something and hold it under your armpit as you go down and up. And that will tell you that you're keeping your arm in the position and activating the lats. If you've enjoyed this content, please do hit the like button. If you've got a comment or a question, leave it in the comment section below. If you've learnt something new, hit the thanks button. And if you want to watch more tutorials like this, please do hit the subscribe button and the bell icon.